Welcome to the 10x Growth Strategies podcast. I'm your host, Saradha Sriram, business technology strategist. We have with us today Naren Shanker. Naren is a founder and entrepreneur who recently co-founded Hosted AI. Welcome to our podcast, Naren.
Really good to be here. Thanks for having me. Thanks.
Naren, tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to this entrepreneurial journey.
So, like most people, here in the Valley, I spent a good amount of my career working in large technology companies. And while it was a great experience overall, I think there's always the energy of the Valley that catches up, right? At some point, you do talk to people who have founded companies. In fact, a lot of my friends started quitting their jobs and founding companies. And in fact, one of them was very successful as well. He got a really good exit. So, somewhere that, what do you call it? It's that seed gets sowed, right? And I started my journey in 2014 when, and timing wise, it was probably like an interesting choice of time because 2014 was when we had our daughter and she was born in February, and I started my entrepreneurial journey in November. So it was like, it was a little bit, what do you call it? Usually when people plan their entrepreneurial journey, it's like, okay, let me make sure everything is in order, like let me take care of these things, and then I'll jump in. But in my case, somehow, the opportunity presented itself, and I just, grabbed it with both hands and decided to jump straight into it. And it's and overall, I think it's been a great journey so far, because at the end of the day, right, I think as an entrepreneur, at some level, I mean, not 100%, but at some level, you definitely have a lot more freedom. You have a lot more say on your own destiny. You have a lot more ability to, design what the future can hold for you. I mean, especially in today's day and age, right? I mean, we keep hearing news about like downsizing, this, that. In large corporations, at some level, you are at the mercy of what the business is going through, right? You may be the greatest contributor to the business, but if your contribution to the business is not that valuable to the business, no matter how good you are, you're part of the plans for a company to, like companies have their restructuring plans and so on, which are based on their strategy. So in many levels, you're actually dependent on an external ecosystem for your success. Whereas in an entrepreneurial journey, you definitely have a lot more freedom and also a lot more, let me call it as like, say on your own destiny, right? But it comes at a cost. It comes at a cost where you have to actually go put yourself out there. You have to earn the trust of people. You have to, you have to prove that you are, what do you call it, you are worthy of being an entrepreneur, for lack of a better word, right? And those things, I mean, I always tell people, it comes, this every territory comes with its challenges. And entrepreneurship, while it's glorified, it's like it's seen in a very, what do you call it, like even a romantic light, right? People look and say, oh wow, entrepreneurs and all that. It's got its ups and downs. And it's, to be honest, it's probably, I'm sure you've interviewed a lot of entrepreneurs before, and most of them will tell you it's like 80% of the days are like, you have no idea of what you're doing. 20% of the days you probably see some light at the end of the tunnel. So yeah, it's yeah, but overall, would I trade it for anything? No, I think it's been totally worth it. And yeah, and I think this is really what's my passion. So,
That is so insightful to hear that 2014 was the year that transformed your life with your daughter, as well as switching to a founder mode. The book, we are discussing today is a journey within essentials of the art of living. It's very close to what he just talked about. The book by Sri Ravi Shankar. So, Naren, what led you to read this book? I'm very curious about your journey to reading this book, and I'm really looking forward to discussing some of its themes with you.
sure. I mean, art of living as a practice has been like, it's been something that I got introduced to even as early as 2000. So I got introduced to the techniques and practices of art of living in 2000. And to be honest, I mean, it was very, it was very revolutionary in the sense that, more often than not, right? I mean, like when you hear like, okay, you have some yoga practice, or you have some spiritual practice, or whatever it is. You practice for a particular amount of time, and then you start seeing results, right? For that matter, even gym, right? If you have to go and get in shape, it takes months before you can get into shape, right? But for me, what really struck me about the art of living practices was, like, the impact was very direct, and it was very immediate, right? It was like you do the techniques and you immediately notice a huge shift in your mental health. And I mean, back in 2000, I just graduated from my undergraduate college in India, and it was not like I was going through some major challenges or so on, but just the amount of energy it gave me, the amount of confidence it gave me, the amount of, what do you call it, like the amount of insightfulness it gave me into my own personality, that was very valuable, right? So I've been practicing it over the years, and this particular book, Journey Within, is actually a compilation of all the teachings of art of living, right? It's a compilation, not just in terms of like, okay, here is a book of knowledge, go read it, right? It's a compilation in terms of like various facets of life, and how a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of wisdom can help you in various facets of your life. That's it. And it's like one of those books that's like, what do you call it, it's a good handy book to have by your side when you're going through life's challenges. Like, for example, if there's a particular topic that that a particular challenge that you're facing in your life, it probably translates to a particular topic in the book. So yeah.
It is very interesting that you came upon this book and the practice very, very early in life. I want to focus a little bit upon intersections of work, your purpose, and discipline.
Mhm.
So, how do the disciplines that you've explored, how have they shaped your understanding um, meaningful work in the context of the book?
See, a lot of, I mean, maybe this is a more macro level on everything, right? A lot of people live their lives, people are happy. I mean, for the most part, right, people have a good life, people are happy. I mean, at least people have figured out what they want in their life, what to do in their life. And of course, life has its own challenges, it has its own, there's speed bumps here and there, but for the most part, I'd say a lot of people have figured out how to live life, right? It's a it's it's one of those things. And I mean, you go to YouTube, you go to TikTok. In fact, there's so many podcasts on like living a better life and living life successfully and all that, right? But for me, I think the thing that really mattered a lot was, let me call it as the quest for the unknown, right? It's like, see, somewhere deep within, you look at life and say there must be more to life than meets the eye, right? And for me, this thing started happening after I lost my grandmother back in, I think it was 2001 or 2. And somewhere, there's a person who's been a very close integral part of your life, and suddenly they're gone, right? So it kind of leads you into that. For me, it led me into a quest for, let's call it as a deeper understanding of life, a deeper understanding of human consciousness. And that has really shaped a lot of my thinking, right? I think it's even understanding things like, how does our mind work, right? What are thoughts, what are emotions? See, neither at school, nor at home, nor in the workplace have we been taught how to deal with our mind, right? See, we've been said, okay, be happy, be content, right? But nobody has actually taught us techniques and tools as to how to deal with our own mind. I mean, we put a lot of our, and don't get me wrong, success in the outside world obviously is important. There's a lot of emphasis on, you do this, you do that, you wake up at 4:30. In fact, right now, I'm sure you guys are following, there is this guy called Ashton Hall, whose whole thing is all about wake up at 4 and sleep at 6 or 7 in the evening. So you have all these different styles and mantras of, like, how to succeed in the world, which is important. Don't get me wrong, success in the world, it's like, when you're living in the world, you may as well live successfully, right? Yeah. Otherwise, you may go and you could go and retire as a monk in the Himalayas and live there, which is also an acceptable thing in my opinion. But when you're living in the world, you may as well live successfully. But at the same time, you know living in the world where one has an understanding of, let me call it as the inner aspects of life, right? And in my experience over the years, the let me call it as the my inner atmosphere, right? We put a lot of attention on our external atmosphere, which is people, circumstances, situation, work, this, that. But somewhere deep within, like, putting attention on my inner atmosphere, it's made a lot of difference to my life, right? And what I started realizing over time is the way I deal with, you know, with my mind, with my emotions, with my thoughts, a lot of it starts manifesting in the real world. And it's a coming back to your specific question in terms of like my thought process and so on. A lot of it is governed by, first regulating the insides and then manifesting it on the outside, right? It's a it's like, I use this term quite often. I mean, it's Apple's iPod, I call it as like inner peace and outer dynamism, right? People often live life the other way around. There's a lot of, you know people seem very calm on the outside, but somewhere, when people seem very happy, very joyful, but somewhere there's a lot of inner turbulence, right? Because people are like, somewhere people have not learned how to deal with things that are very fundamental to life. In fact, there is the story that I tell people. Do we have time for a quick story?
Absolutely. Please go on. This is very
So there's a
interesting.
story where, there is a scientist that decides to take a break for a day, and then he goes on a boat. Okay. And as he's going in the boat, it's just the boatman and the scientist who's in the boat. And the boat goes, like, into the lake, and at some point there's no signal, there's no connectivity, and then the scientist starts talking to the boatman, right? So he first asks this boatman, Mr. Boatman, do you know anything about physics and so on? And the boatman says no. So the scientist says 25% of your life has gone waste. Right? Then they go a little further, and then he asks the question around, like, do you know anything about the, what do you call it, like the electromechanical stuff around the boat and so on? And then the boatman says, if I knew that, I'd be building boats, not rowing it. So no. And then the scientist says 50% of your life is waste. And then there's another third question where the boatman again doesn't know the answer. The scientist says 75% of your life is waste, has gone waste. And they go a little further. And at some point, the boatman comes and asks the scientist, right? It's like, I have a question for you, sir, now. And this boatman asks a simple question, which is, do you know how to swim? And the scientist says no. Scientist has been very busy learning math, physics, chemistry, quantum stuff and all that, but he's not put attention on, on a
Basic life
fundamental
skills.
skill like swimming. And this boatman says, you know what, 100% of your life is going to go waste because there's a hole in this boat and it's about to capsize, right? It's a story that I tell people mainly because, I think a lot of our emphasis in life is on so-called external factors, right? I think we put a, and it is, I mean, again, I don't want to undermine it, I don't want to underplay it, because it's, it the idea is not to like just sound preachy or so on, right? You obviously need to implement what you learn in the outside world, but having a much more deeper, thorough understanding of what is happening on our insides, that makes a huge difference, right? And if we can, like, we're all used to dental hygiene. If we wake up in the morning, brush our teeth, like that, I tell people, if you have mental hygiene, which is, at some level we should know how to mind is what it's like. Just like any other physical part of the body, the mind also goes through wear and tear, right? And we just don't know how to, we don't know how to take care of it, right? But once we do that, it starts manifesting a lot in terms of, like, you know clarity in life. It manifests a lot in terms of, what do you call it, like, approaching life from a very calm, cool, collected standpoint. And you're also able to be very successful in life, right? I mean, success comes from us. Many times people chase success without even understanding what success means. When you say people, I've met a lot of so-called famous people, successful people, rich people. In general, like, even all those people are still looking for something. There is a quest on the outside, which there is a quest for the unknown, actually. That's really what it is. Like, somewhere there is that quest for the unknown. And, for me, that quest for the unknown has actually been it's been a driving factor of my life, right? And that quest for the unknown has resulted in a lot of, let's call it as good outcomes in the known world. Yeah. So for me, I mean, going back to, the crux of the question, it's like, for me, a much deeper understanding of human life, human mind, human thoughts, human emotions. It's really propelled me to a point of, like, living in the world and acting in a particular way, which can encompass that.
You gave a very good example, of time talking about the boatman, the scientist. You kind of blended two seemingly unrelated fields that led to a lot of insight. So, based on the same topic, what happens when your work starts to feel a little misaligned with your inner values?
See, it is bound to happen. Like at some point, it's like when we are living in a world. See, whether we like it or not, want it or not, we live in a world where there's different ways of working. There's different opinions. There's different styles, and sometimes the way things are on the outside may not exactly match your inner values, right? And it's a at that point, see, like for example, if you have the freedom to align the outer world to your inner values, you should most definitely try it. I know it sounds very, what do you call it, airy fairy, but at a very practical level, let me say it. I mean, let's say if someone is here on a visa and you don't like the values of your team at work, I mean, rather than say, okay, let me just, like, what do you call it, let me just abruptly quit. That's going to put your life in jeopardy, right? Your career in jeopardy, not life. It's going to put your career in jeopardy. Build a thoughtful exit process, right? I mean, sometimes when values don't align, you can see if, of course, I'm not saying like if values don't align, immediately quit, right? It's more like, okay, if values don't align, see if you are, in fact, take even a step back, because sometimes we have a particular expectation of how things should be in the world, right? And we look at the world with our own lens. So it's also possible that maybe there is a little bit of learning for me in this process, right? When something is on the outside doesn't really resonate with me, is it something that's truly not resonating, or is it something that is uncomfortably pushing me out of my comfort zone and making me grow, right? If something is actually pushing you out of your comfort zone and making you grow, then you can totally, what do you call it, you can grow from that process. But if something, like for example, if something, it's unethical behavior in a company or so on, which it's like for example, the ethics are defined by a code of ethics, right? And if something is unethical, then it doesn't fit the norm. At that point, yes, uh, you can, of course, make you can prepare yourself, and if you have the ability to change the circumstances, you should, right? But again, just in a spirit of, like, like people coming to this country, being here, you should also, if it doesn't align to your values, you should figure out a plan to exit, not just exit. You figure out a plan for your next career move. You should work on it and work towards it, not just make impulsive decisions, right? I mean, sometimes, in fact, especially the Gen Z, right? Gen Z, there is a lot of, at least this is not me saying it, it's scientific studies saying that there's a lot of impulsive behavior. Impulsive behavior is fine as long as you're able to deal with the consequences of it. Right? So you cannot suddenly go and, like, tell your boss, I don't like how things are working here, I'm out, right? And then your boss is like, okay, good, bye. And then you don't have a plan B for it, you don't have not acted on, like, a backup solution and so on, then it doesn't ring well.
In this decision making process that you're talking about, obviously there's a lot of creativity, intellect, and intuition that comes into play. Uh, how does creativity show up in the way you approach your work or mission?
So it's a great question, right? Human life is, I mean, somewhere deep within, we're all very creative, right? It's a And if you look at kids are super creative. But over the years, like somewhere, like, people get, like, as we grow older and older, right? We run into this thing called the world and the people and their experiences, and somehow our creativity starts getting stifled over time, right? So the one thing I've seen is in this, especially, I mean, in fact, it's true all over the world right now. There is a lot of emphasis on intellectual creativity, right? Which is like, okay, the world is like this today, there are certain problems, like for example, say in the field of technology, right? I mean, we had a particular understanding of artificial intelligence, and there was a particular set of problems it was solving, and then suddenly came Chat GPT with its very different way of looking at things, right? And obviously it was great for the world. I mean, today it's like so ingrained. I mean, it's so ingrained in everyone's thought process. Like, just like, you know, I'm sure there was a calculator moment back in the 1950s or 60s. I don't know exactly when calculators were invented, but similar to that, there's been like, like there is this Chat GPT moment which makes people rethink, right? And that is, let me call that as intellectual creativity, right? But to me, intellectual creativity is great. It's a step in the right direction. But as humans, we also have the ability to be intuitive, right? And what I notice is there's a lot of emphasis right now on like the intellectual creativity. There's a lot of emphasis on, what do you call it, like, intellectual clarity. There's a lot of emphasis on, like, building new things and so on, which is all good. But somewhere deep within us humans, we have the ability to also be intuitive, right? But being intuitive needs a little bit. It's kind of like that eureka moment of Archimedes, right? I mean, you do a lot of things, and then suddenly, when you're actually when you're doing nothing at all, then wisdom dawns, right? So, and there is that intuitive moment that comes in. Oh, wow, this is what it is, right? And most remarkable innovations in the world have come from a space of intuition, not just intellect, right? It's like, yes, intellectually you can define, let's call it as, advancements in technology, advancements in any field that you're working in. But intuitively, you define game changing moments, right? I mean, like if you look at, our understanding of physics has moved from classic Newtonian physics to Einstein's relativity to now quantum physics, and every evolution is governed by some kind of an intuitive process. And right now, I mean, even coming back to the world of technology, we are in this world today of, like, okay, there's GPUs, and Nvidia is making a lot of buck out of it, and it's those are all things that are really good to have. But somewhere, right, somewhere the quantum computing and all those things are also coming. I mean, humans are really good at, like, let me call it as like, I mean, humans are intuitive by nature, and someone somewhere is going to, like, define the next level of what's possible, right? And coming back to your actual question on, like, how does it shape my thinking? I do put a lot of emphasis on intuitive thought process, right? Many times, I've actually had circumstances in my life where intellectually my decision should have been go down path A, but intuitively it was like, okay, it's like, I should actually not go down path A, and I should do path B, right? On paper, when you look at it, right, it says, oh wow, it's path A. I mean, if you do all the math, in the intellectual math, path A seems to take you to a really good destination, and path B is not that clear. But somewhere intuitively, maybe the best way to describe intuition is your gut feeling.
Yep.
Your gut feeling knows that path B is better, and you go down path B and you back yourself at that point. That has, in fact, to be honest, like, as you said, like 3x exits, being an entrepreneur, I've followed my gut feeling a lot more, right? I mean, sometimes, like, people, including my wife, there's been questions of, like, oh, is it really the right thing, right? I mean, people are close to my friends, family members. Are you sure you're doing the right thing, right? You have something which is so good. Are you going to, like, drop this and pick something which has got so much of unknown in it? But at that point, you got to, like, trust your intuition and back yourself up, right? And then you start to see that, you're, then you really start to, you know, live life a little bit from that space of the unknown that I was saying earlier, right? When you start getting more and more comfortable with the unknown, with the, with less data points, with less parameters, but you're actually comfortable taking the decision, then there is somewhere I really feel you've learned something in life, right? And that learning is priceless, because that intuitive gut feeling that you can start backing yourself with, that can really take you places. And this is, I mean, just to be clear, this is not like something so unique to Naren, or for that matter any entrepreneur or anything. Every human being has the ability to get there, right? I think it's just a question of nurturing one's intuition. Just like there's so much of emphasis put on, okay, middle school, high school, undergrad, grad school, right? You go and master all these things like that. If there is a little bit of attention on, developing one's mental acuity, developing one's emotional intelligence, developing one's intuitive abilities, then you're able to take all of this and actually put it in the world in terms of something meaningful. And you really see that. And in all fairness, if you see, going back to what I said earlier, most groundbreaking innovations in the world have all come from a space of intuition. So, and
That is so true.
each one of us is capable of it. It's not a, just like science can be learned, intuition can also be learned.
That's very impressive that your intuition, you've been consistently successful with that. And as you treading through this, how do you measure the social impact and the ethical integration that needs to be in place? Where I'm going with this is, what are the systems of structure that people would need to shift to support more purpose driven and holistic careers?
See, I think that's a great question. I mean, here I'm probably going to come back to a little bit of like, so far I've been talking about the unknown, intuition and all. I think, here I'm going to be very practical about it, which is, if you really want to pursue a life that, you know like, I mean, let's say you're passionate about certain things, you're passionate about certain causes, you're passionate about certain things that you'd like to see in society, you should build a structured plan to get there, right? It's not, many times what I see, especially, these days, is like I said, there's probably a lot of impulsive action that happens, which, impulsive action is not intuitive action, right? I mean, intuitive action is a little bit more, it's a little bit more thoughtful, it's a little bit more, you actually, people say sleep on something, right? And you get a right answer. Intuitive is much more, it's not impulsive. Intuitive is much more from a real gut feeling space. But impulsive action sometimes is like, okay, you know what, I'm very passionate about this cause, let me go and support it. I mean, I'll give you a simple example, right? Which is, without taking a political angle here, like, we've seen a lot of students and others get deported from this country because somewhere you just jump into a very impulsive thought process, you back something, and then you have no idea of what you've been backing, right? And I mean, a lot of people have been backing a lot of these political causes, have found themselves right now in, like, students on like visas have found themselves in a very tough spot, right? And so yes, it is, if you're passionate about something, first, of course, make sure you're passionate about the right thing. And what is, like, is, it's not something that's short term. But there are many people who are very passionate about, like, for example, I'm very passionate about, like, seeing the world be a much better place, right? In terms of, like, people being much more happy, people being stress free, so on. But that's not an overnight decision to say, okay, you know what, I'm going to do that, right? There is a structured thought process that goes around how you can, champion your causes in your life, and take it one step at a time, right? I mean, at a very practical level, like for me, art, like I told you, art of living has been very near and dear to my heart, and art of living does a lot of projects and all activities around the world. So I started by saying, you know what, I'm going to volunteer 1 hour a week, right? And that tangible 1 hour a week, then you start seeing impact from that 1 hour a week, you start seeing people's lives get better from that 1 hour a week. That motivates you to do more. Okay, that one becomes two, right? And then two becomes four at some point when you, and I mean, like, right now, yes, even today, right? Like, I have a, I mean, I run a company, I do things, I volunteer, but it's something where it's a conscious decision to say, okay, I need to be doing this and this, right? And if you have the means to actually go, I mean, if you're really passionate about something, and it's at least the definition of right could be very different for different people, at least, by most standards it appears the right thing to do, and you have the means to actually pursue it full time, you could, right? I mean, and many people have done that. I mean, many people, many successful people, like, in fact, if you look at all our, billionaires, right, somewhere deep within the thing is like, let me be philanthropic, right? Let me actually do something meaningful, because the real thing here, Sharda, is like, all humans, somewhere deep within us, we have that instinct to give to the world. we are used to the world. Our whole brain is wired in the process of taking. Get a good job, get a good life partner, get a good, get a good total comp, right? It's we are so wired in this process of taking. But for people who have really become successful, right, and in some process you see, what, you worked hard, you did all this. I mean, let's say, for example, say bill I mean a Bill Gates or a Jeff Bezos, or pretty much, I mean, the Berkshire,
Warren Buffett. Yeah.
Warren Buffett. All of them have been okay. They've written off 90-95% of their wealth to charity, right? Because somewhere deep within, when you actually cross that thing of like getting in, and you've gotten all that you could, more than you ever could get, right? You get to a point where you want to start giving back, right? And that is the human nature. Human nature is to give. Human nature is to serve. And if you have means to do it, absolutely do it, right? But minimally, what I can say is everybody can definitely volunteer for a little bit of time. It could be, what, 1 hour, 2 hours. You can make an impact to the world, right? And do it from a space where you really don't want anything for yourself. Sometimes volunteering also becomes a PR exercise. Right? It's not that way, saying, okay, oh, I'm like volunteer, or I'm like doing service becomes a PR exercise. It's not that, right? You genuinely want to serve with expecting nothing in return. Then you see that, yeah, there's some meaning to life. And yes, by all means, if you can spend more time with it, back yourself.
Absolutely. The intention really matters. I would really like to hear from you specifically from the book on how you've been a lifelong learner and what kind of cross pollination happens
I
for
know
you
we've been
with.
talking about this book quite a bit, so maybe it's good time to actually pick something, right? Let me pick a page. I mean, there's many themes in this book. There's one which is probably interesting, which is acting in the world, how to handle life's events and situations. I'm going to randomly pick a page there, which is, let me go here. You know what? Maybe it's the first page. It's page 82. Should I read it? It's
Absolutely, please do.
This is from, yeah, this is from Gurudev, who is the founder of Art of Living. It says rest and activity. So, activity and rest are two vital aspects of life, and balancing them is a skill in itself. Knowing when to have what and how much to have is wisdom. Finding them in each other, activity in rest and rest in activity, is the ultimate freedom. Yeah. I'll delve a little deeper into it in a little bit, but let me first finish the whole thing. See, the memory of hard work is more tiring than the work itself. Thinking you've worked hard interferes with the quality of rest. Some people take pride in just working hard without any achievement. And then there are others who crave a long rest, not knowing that the true rest is in the non doership, which is not getting caught in your personal role in the actions you take or in the outcome. It is the quality of rest, even if it's short, that recuperates you. When rest is needed, your body will automatically take it. Resting without thinking about the need for it is more restful. Yeah, so there's some questions, like two or three questions that are here. So the question that, by the way, this book is a compilation of knowledge from Gurudev Sri Ravi Shankar. So he travels the world. He meets so many people, and every evening he has this, like, he meets people where it's in a setting, it's in a public setting where people get to ask questions openly. And a lot of this book is from compilations over the
Yeah.
years. So this is a question, right? It says our work is very stressful. We don't get enough time for the family. What should we do? And Gurudev, his answer is, do you spend quality time with your family? Even if you spend half an hour, are you cordial and fully attentive to the needs of your family? It's not the length of time that you spend with your family that matters, it is the quality of time that matters. So then there is just a snippet here which says, thinking you need rest makes you restless. Thinking you have to work hard makes you tired. Thinking you have worked hard brings self pity. Isn't it true? Right? It's like,
Very practical
many
wisdom.
times people say, "Oh, I want to rest, I want to rest, I want to rest," but they're not, they're not able to actually, insomnia. is a good thing. Oh, I need to sleep, I need to sleep. But there's so much activity in the mind, people are not able to sleep. Like somewhere the mind is going back to the outside, right? I mean, what happens in sleep? Our mind is retrieving itself from the senses, right? Our mind is used to operating through the five senses, and there's a lot of stimulation of the mind that happens through the five senses, right? But when we sleep, or when we meditate for that matter, your mind is coming back to its source, right? But if the mind is so engrossed in all the activities outside, you're not able to rest. That makes you restless and insomnia. Thinking you've worked hard makes you tired, isn't it? When you say, oh, I've worked very hard, like somewhere we've done some work, but we attach a lot of, what do you call it, doership to that work. I've worked hard, I've worked hard, I've worked hard, and just the thought process, I've worked hard, makes us tired. And this is at a practical level at work. Many people feel, oh, I worked very hard, and then people say, oh, I'm burnt out, right? It's like the same people who say I've worked very hard are the people who will say I've burnt out. If you notice, it's very,
Yes.
because somewhere there's a lot of attachment to, I did this work, or I'm working very hard, right? And then, yeah, thinking you worked hard brings self-pity. I worked so hard, I did not get my promotion. I worked so hard, my boss doesn't recognize me. I work so hard, my spouse doesn't think I'm doing enough, right? So all those things, it brings self-pity. Yeah. So contentment, centeredness, and experience of the self are deeper rest. So experience of the self comes through meditation. Yeah. And I mean, going back to, I mean, in Art of Living, like the practices, that there's this very incredible technique called Sudarshan Kriya that I've learned. So it's called sky breathing. I mean, it's been taught to like hundreds of millions of people around the world, and it's like right at the beginning of the talk, like I told you, right? It was, for me, the aha moment there was, it was not some philosophy, it was not somebody preaching, it was not somebody saying, oh, you're going to feel better after a long time. Then and there, right? I saw the impact. And it really boiled down to, being able to use the breath as a tool to take control of one's mind. So breath work, meditation, all those things make a huge impact on, and on anyone's life, right? And it's like, once I give this example to people, and I hope this doesn't happen to anyone, but let's say you're backing up your car,
Mhm.
and as you're backing your car, it hits a small post, right? There's a very, very small ding or dent in the car. You step out of the car, you look at it, and you say, oh, wow, it's not a big deal. It's a very small dent, right? And then, not a big deal. You go sit in the car, you drive it to your home, you park it in the garage, and then next morning you wake up, right? And you go and look at that car. Would that ding or dent have disappeared by itself? No, it's still going to be there, right? It's the You need to take it to the body shop to fix it, even no matter how small it is. Like that, we all go through events in life, right? Whether we like it or not, want it or not, we go through so many events in life, right? And each of those events, again, whether we like it or not, whether we realize it or not, each of those events leaves a ding or a dent in our system, right? Both at the physiological or body level, and at the psychological or mental level, right? So at the body level, what happens? It's like, you know, over time, right? All these dings and dents manifest in the form of high blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes, and all these. I mean, even cancers. I mean, there's enough scientific research linking all these things to a stressful life. And at a mental level or psychological level, just overall, there's that edginess in life, and the extremes of it are, there's anxiety, right? And anxiety is a very, very common thing these days. There's so much of anxiety medication that's being prescribed. America in particular is like the headquarters of prescription meds for mental and psychological disorder. I mean, it's not even a disorder, right? I mean, it's again, severe anxiety is a disorder, but like anxiety just on a day-to-day level, right? People say, okay, let me go and pop a pill to take care of it. But coming back to this, right? So anxiety dip on the other side is depression, right? People feel lack of energy, this, that, and then it translates into a very, the on the other end spectrum of it is depression. So all these things, right? I mean, at some level, it has got to do with these dings and dents that we accumulate in our system, right? Rather than just pop a pill for all of it, like, somewhere these dings and dents are, like, I call it as like toxins in our central nervous system. And breath work, like sky meditation, like Sudarshan Kriya, like meditation that you learn, it does, I call it as like a vacuum clean of your central nervous system. All these toxins that we've been accumulating over the years, it removes it, right? And the other thing I also say is like, it's not that, it's somewhere deep within, everybody goes through this. It's not like you need to have a very challenging life to go and learn it, right? Sometimes people say, oh, like, I will learn it when life is challenging, right? It's not that, right? It's going back to what I said, whether we like it or not, want it or not, these dings and dents are happening in our system. And it's a matter of time, right? You're better off acting on it before it becomes anxiety. You're better off acting on it before it becomes depression. You're better off acting on it before it results in some, diabetes, right? Like, so this, it's a little bit more of a proactive approach to life. And that, that makes a huge difference, right? And also, I'm a very, very, very strong believer in that the state of your mind influences the state of your life. If you're feeling alive, joyful, well, and you actually are really feeling it from within, you're not just putting a facade outside to the world. I mean, the one thing I do notice a lot in corporate America is there is a facade outside. In particular, if you look at the top execs of large companies and all that, they are trained heavily on, like, okay, these are the talking points, right? Somewhere, like going back to the question you asked earlier, there's a disconnect between who they are and what they say, and people see it. People actually see it. Like, it's a the average human being is very intelligent, right? When they look at it, they say, okay, is this person actually believing in what they say, or are they like giving the talking points, right? So it's a, yeah, it's very, what do you call it, it's a, I mean, it's possible. I mean, it's actually possible for everybody to experience that little bit of, let's call it as, detoxification of the nervous system. It's possible for them to experience, a lot of clarity in terms of, I mean, once all these toxins are removed, there's clarity in the mind. There's actually purity in the heart, and there's also sincerity in action, right? Those are the three things that I think are successful, are mantras for a successful life: clarity in the mind, purity in the heart. Purity in the heart means your intentions are good. Sometimes you make tough decisions, but your intentions are good, right? There's purity in the heart, and there is sincerity in action. You're actually in action, and you're doing things the right way.
That is a wonderful recipe. I do want to conclude by saying, Sri Ravi Shankar's The Journey Within offers practical wisdom on finding lasting happiness by connecting with your inner self through breathing techniques, meditation, and mindfulness. The book, I love reading the book. It does guide the readers through transforming stress and negative emotions into peace and joy by discovering the unchanging center of consciousness within. It is very simple and very profound. I liked how Stacey shows how spiritual awareness can be integrated into everyday modern life, leading to greater fulfillment and harmony. I sincerely want to thank you, Naren. Thank you for sharing your illuminating insights from the journey within and bringing this transformative wisdom to our listeners today. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. Enjoyed being with you.